Travis Willingham.
Yeah, I started playing Knuckles first, I think in 2009 or 2010 when they started supplementing some of the voices with California actors instead of the New York actors. And I was a big fan of Dan Green's take on Knuckles. They asked me to try and get as close to that performance as possible just to keep some continuity in the character. And right away I loved his kind of his competitive nature with Sonic, how he secretly thinks he's better than him, but he's also like a very strong and powerful ally that Sonic and Tails have. So I liked their relationship, and I kind of just liked the way that his character seemed really just kind of cool, you know, pretty slick guy. And with the new Sonic Boom video game and television series, when I saw the redesign, I was immediately excited just because he seems like a totally buff guy that just skips leg day at the gym. He's just got like the most massive upper body in the world, and these itty bitty little legs, which is fine. And I kind of like the tape accents on everybody. It just kind of gives them that, you know, like they're actually getting their hands dirty and doing work and really having to, you know, keep things together. The character has added a level of humor that I don't think the show or the video games has had before. We were doing, in the early casting process, we were doing an improv session with some of the show creators just to try and see what kind of attitudes would work with Knuckles, because there hasn't been a lot that's really been there personality-wise. Like, he's always been competitive with Sonic. He's always, you know, kind of been out for himself, but looking to do the right thing. And we wanted to kind of build a type of a personality for him that would work in that group dynamic of Amy, Tails, and Sonic. And naturally, my slightly idiotic self brought a level of stupidity that was immediately recognized and absorbed into the character. So it's not that Knuckles is slow or anything. He might just be slightly oblivious, probably stemming from his being so self-centered and everything. And he's still competitive with Sonic and still thinks that Sonic is the president of his fan club and that sort of thing. But when it comes to addition or arithmetic or proper grammar, that might not be a high priority for Knuckles as much as punching things with his ginormous arms. Not as high of a priority as that. But I think people are going to be really pleased with the not just the action of the show, but the character relationships that they've written in. We have a fantastic writer for the show, Bill Friedberger. He's worked on Animaniacs and Simpsons and all sorts of stuff. So he's really written some of the funnier scripts that I've had a chance to work with. And Knuckles has quickly become one of my favorite characters to play, just of how funny he is. So I'm excited for people to see some of the character relationships as they come around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. Okay, I can do it.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of Japanese work in the past, of course, voicing over as they come overseas, but now it looks like you're doing a lot of American stuff in recent years, you know, with Thor, with Sonic, etc. Is there a difference doing the voice work for the ones that are coming over from Japan versus the American ones?
Yeah. You know, I always said that it's you have a slight advantage and disadvantage when working on Japanese properties, because the face is already there, the emotion is drawn on the face, the action is set. You know, there's a specific length of time for the lines to be said in. So once you establish what the voice sounds like, what the character wants, you know, and what's being said line to line to line, it's a lot easier because there's not as much that your imagination has to fill out for yourself. In original animation, there's nothing there. So sometimes we may have a storyboard, which will have our character in a single frame, like, you know, showing an action or showing a emotion or something like that. But other than that, it's up to us to just kind of fill it out. Anime and other Japanese properties. Don't worry, that's so fun. You know, there's a certain, I guess, advantage to just being able to say, like, I know what this needs to sound like in this line, and I need to match that, and until we get it to that point, like, you know, we'll do it till it's right. In original stuff, whether it's, you know, Thor or you know, if it's Sonic and these lines are being done for the first time, or you know, we also do Sophia the First for the Disney Channel and stuff like that. You're just kind of walking into a blank canvas and just doing kind of whatever comes, and that's also very freeing as well. But for me, my roots, I guess, or since I learned animation, kind of doing anime in Dallas first, it gave me a huge heads up kind of on the animation world, because when we're in the booth, you can see the people that have done anime. They're the ones that are the best doing fighting reactions, and they're the best at the action scenes. Like, Thor is not a quiet guy, so when he calls down the thunder or whatever, it says, for Asgard, or throws his hammer, the people that have done anime in the room, Troy Baker, Fred Tatasciore, Roger Craig Smith, Laura, myself, we're the loudest people in the room, because we're, the people that have done, Naruto and DBZ and stuff like that. So the producers and the animators are always going, why are you so good at fighting? I'm like, well, we have a little practice, so yeah, there are differences and there are similarities, but there are advantages to both. So yeah.
With all the work that you do for video games and cartoons and anime, do you find that when you're just out in the regular world, is it adults who recognize you first, or is it kids?
We actually, it's a beautiful thing with our work. We don't get recognized that often. We get to maintain our anonymity, which is great. We're only recognized at events like these, actually. I think I could count on one or two hands the number of times I've been recognized outside of an event in the past 2 years, which is great. When it does happen, it's shocking. We're in the grocery store one time in the cereal aisle, and somebody went, "Travis Willingham?" And I was like, "What? The what?" Yes, officer, or and they immediately look at you and then look at what cereal you're looking at, and you're looking at Lucky Charms. You're like, "No, I'm looking at the healthy one below it, not the marshmallow cereal. What can I help you with?" So that's kind of shocking. Another time was at an amusement park, but it doesn't happen that often, and actually adults and kids both would recognize our voices before they would recognize our faces. So sometimes we'll be somewhere and you'll hear someone, you'll see someone over the shoulder of the person you're talking to, and they'll be like, and they'll turn and look over, and you're like, "I don't know. Yes?" And they're like, "Your voice sounds very familiar." "Oh no, I don't. I'm sorry, I have a cold. I don't know why that sounds familiar." And you just try and make your way out of there. And other times you have to, for instance, I was able to go back in town for a high school alumni event, and they're like, "Will you come speak to some of the students about your experiences?" And I'm like, "Sure." Oh my gosh, I feel so old. And you go in and they totally don't care. Kids have cell phones in class, which we didn't even have when I was in high school, and they're all there kind of looking at Tumblr or Twitter or whatever, and you're talking and nobody's paying attention, and you're like, "All right, I work on Avengers and Full Metal Alchemist and Sonic and Oran High School Host Club and Ultimate Spider-Man and Lego Batman 3, and one by one you start seeing little heads pop up, and they're like, what? And you're like, "Okay, so now you're interested. That's great." And they're like, "Who are you in these?" And you tell them, and they're like, "But that doesn't sound like you." You're like, "Aha! Voice acting. There we go. Young minds coming alive. Here we are." So it's one of those things where we're very thankful to be anonymous, but at the same time, we enjoy it when people go, "Hey, I like your work." You're like, "Yay!"
Because I was wondering, because after Infamous Second Son, it looks exactly like you. Reggie Rowe looks identical to you, so I was just...
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We were told by Sucker Punch, they were like, we're going to scan your likeness in to utilize the tech as much as possible, and then we're going to try and change some of your features so that it's not exactly your face. And we were like, cool. And I was told that it was going to be a combination of my face and Benjamin Bratt's face, and they had this composite. I was like, yeah, it kind of looks like me, but not really. And then when they started implementing it in the game, it wasn't working as well. The fluidity wasn't as sharp as if it was just my face. And the same was true with Troy and Laura. And, your first reaction is like, "Holy expletive, my face is in a video game, that's amazing!" And then you're like, holy expletive, my face is on a video game that's going out to the entire world. Which you're like, wow, that's pretty incredible. But we were nothing short of thrilled, especially Troy, who got his very own, 19-inch resin statue or whatever as a superhero standing with a chain. I'm like, okay, you suck. Where's my statue for Reggie? No, no statue for me. I have to wait.
I'd be even worse if Laura got one.
That's, she may. She has powers, I don't. She rubs it in my face daily at home.
Is there a particular character that you usually like, that you have a desire to voice act? Like maybe the cool laid back guy, or the one that has like the personality?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am leaning more towards kind of the just the dry, mostly sarcastic, slightly quippy characters these days. I was being cast more and more as like the tough military, deep voice guy, which is fine, and I still play that a lot. But there were a lot of producers like, "You're really funny. Do you play funny parts?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. What do you mean, like funny haha, or funny like more funny?" And they were like, "No, just being sarcastic." So there's a lot of characters like Infamous, and Knuckles even has some of that personality stuff that's just kind of like dry and quippy. But I look forward to those because it's funny, and it's not as flat and regimented as your Call of Duty roles or your Battlefield 4 roles or things like that, where you're just yelling grenade and RPG 6,000 times until your larynx ends up on the microphone. Yeah.
Next question. I see, looking through your body of work, that you've been able to revisit a lot of your characters, time and again. Is there anyone that you've always wanted to, but nobody's ever called you to revisit?
I was able to play Superman in Lego Batman 2, and I took it very seriously. Superman was like my favorite character when I was younger, before I started reading Marvel and other comics and graphic novels. So when I was asked to wear the S, even though it was for a kid-friendly version and slightly more cheeky and campy version of Superman, super oblivious Boy Scout, I may or may not have worn a Superman t-shirt to the recording session and asked everyone that was with me to take a picture just to mark the occasion. So there's a small part of me that always hopes that DC will come back around and be like, "Hey, we want you to play Superman again." I'll be like, "Oh, I don't know. Okay, I'll do it." But yeah, I guess that's one of them.
Have you ever walked into a recording booth, kind of maybe slightly dressed as the character, maybe a t-shirt, maybe like some kind of memorabilia, just to try to get into that, I don't know, kind of
Yeah, it's actually kind of common for first records on a new series or on a game. If it's a big franchise that you're a fan of, if it's one of the Halo series when we did Halo 4, or when we did Marvel Superhero Squad or Avengers Assemble, pretty much everyone comes wearing some sort of Marvel or Shield or character t-shirt. It's just one of those things. And the highest example of wearing your character to work would be Halloween. The last 2 years during our Avengers Assemble records, just about every actor that we could get a hold of, we said that we were going to show up to the studio in full cosplay. I mean, in total crap cosplay, not like the good stuff, like the stuff that's still available at the costume store. So if, like an extra large and a child size is the only thing available, you're rocking like a body type Thor outfit that's only coming up to your elbows, with a terrible blonde wig and a little itty bitty hammer. But we all did that, and we've done it the last 2 years. So Laura was there as Black Widow, like all svelte and black, and Troy's wearing a Hawkeye outfit without sleeves, and Fred Tatasciore like smothers his face in green face paint and everything. And I think the funniest one is actually Roger Craig Smith, because when he dresses up his Cap, he got one of the big old school outfits that has all the muscles built in, but for some reason when he puts the mask on, the wings like flop. So he has like one wing down and it kind of hangs low on his face, so he kind of looks like special Captain America. And it's just terrible, but that's how we record. We take ourselves very seriously.
Another question?
Do you ever get people coming up to you who are real emotional about like what happened in one of your roles? Like, say, if it was Infamous Second Son, they're coming up to you at the convention, you're like, "I feel so bad about Reggie."
Yeah, Infamous hasn't been out long enough, and I guess this is our first convention of the year. Actually, we don't get to go to as many as we used to because we're so busy. But We haven't had any for Infamous yet. We see it a lot on like on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. Like, no, I can believe it already. But we get a lot of that for our other shows and stuff too, because we know that the material visited in like Full Metal Alchemist and Mushishi, you know, it means a lot to people in many different ways, and everyone comes from a different background and has a different story for it. So we're always interested to hear what it's meant to different people throughout the year. Sometimes, you know, you'll meet someone who saw Full Metal Alchemist in 2007, 2008, and they're not even meeting you until 2013 or 14. And so they're like, for 8 years, I've had this, you know, drawing, or I've made this Lego statue thing or whatever, and, you know, now it seems kind of silly, but I still want to give it to you, and this is what it meant to me at the time, and, you know, that's a pretty special thing, so, yeah.
Are there any established series that you would like to work on? For example, like, you know, League of Legends is one, something that's like ongoing, or a video game that's coming out, I don't know, like Final Fantasy, that you wish that you could work on. It doesn't have to be video game related.
Right. I'm really excited to hear all the stuff that they're doing with Halo. Well, I guess they announced this morning it's called Halo 5 Guardians. You know, there's a game, there's a web series, there's a Showtime series that's being produced by Steven Spielberg, and then a film that's being done by Ridley Scott. You know, so they're really like going for it. And I was in Halo 4, which was really great, but I just think they're doing fantastic things with that franchise. League of Legends is blowing up, which I'm a part of, which is great. World of Warcraft was one I wanted to be a part of, and now I am, so that's exciting as well. I always think DC Comics animated series have such a short life. I don't understand why they get canceled so quickly. But where the Batman was stylized and cool, I thought Young Justice had a really cool premise, and that was gone a little too soon for me. So I think some DC properties are ones that I would like to kind of get into a little bit more, but gotta hang around longer. Yeah. Yes.
This is going back a little bit, but what was it like working on Secondhand Lions?
Secondhand Lions is fun. I shot Secondhand Lions when I was a senior in college at TCU, so I guess in 2003, and they were filming in Austin, Texas. And the leads in that were Robert Duvall, Michael Caine, and Haley Joel Osment before he grew up and started drinking a bunch. I'm just kidding. He's allowed to. He was in college. It was crazy. That was the first time on set with some really big stars and a lot of in pretty close proximity at some of the scenes. And I was hired to be a thug, actually a hood. I was hood number 1 was my official title. And we had a fight scene with Robert Duvall in one of the scenes, and we rehearsed it for like 2 weeks, and it kept getting postponed because of weather. And then when the day finally came, we were supposed to shoot it with his stunt double, and on the day he decided that he all of a sudden wanted to be in the fight scene. So 73-year-old Robert Duvall, you're not going to say no to. And they took 30 minutes and very quickly and poorly showed him the moves to the fight scene, and the very first move of the fight is me running up to him and throwing this huge roundhouse hook at his head. And they called action. I ran up and I was like, ah! And I stopped like just outside of his head, and he hadn't gone anywhere. He's supposed to like duck. I was like, you're supposed to duck, bro. And he was like, am I ducking here? Oh, and I'm like, oh man, I almost knocked out Robert Duvall. And actually, if you go like frame by frame in the movie on that first punch, you see from then on, I just like if his head was here, I was just aiming like up at the ceiling, like just in case he didn't duck, just throwing it way over his head. And he hadn't been informed properly, so at the end of the fight, I'm kind of the guy that keeps getting up. And the very last move of the fight is he just throws this straight jab to my face and then grabs my head and starts pouring beer on it. And when they called action, he punched me right in the nose, and I was like, boom! And it even though he's an old man, it's still like bones in your nose, and it caught me so off guard. I was like, ow! Like broke the scene. They're like, cut! What are you doing? I'm like, you punched me! And they're like, oh, it must be some misunderstanding. We'll figure it out. And the stunt guy goes over to Robert Duvall and literally just like pats him on the back and walks off. I was like, oh no. You didn't talk to him. They're like, all right, going again, ready, and action. The second time he punches me in the mouth. Like, oh my God. You know, he puts me in the headlock, pours beer on my head, and I'm like, wow, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. I'm like, okay, we need it again. Lights, we move over this way, da 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 da. I'm like, he's still punching me in the face. Can we not in the face? And they call action again, and he hit me in the nose the third time, and it like started to bleed. You know, and I'm like, my eyes are starting to bruise a little bit or whatever, and I got like a bloody nose and my lips fat, and I'm like, he's hit me, man, please, no more. And the fourth one, I'm like, last one. I'm like, okay. I'm standing there, and my hands are like shaking or whatever. And he's looking at me like he's confused, and they call action, and I went, I like flinched, and he's like, why are you flinching? I'm like, I'm sorry, Mr. Duvall, you're punching me in the face, and you're not supposed to be. And he goes, what are you talking about? You're a stunt guy. I'm like, no, I'm an actor, not a stunt man. He looks around and goes, who's been letting me punch this son of a bitch in the face? I'm like, he goes, well, I feel terrible. How about I give you $500 and we'll call it even? I'm like, that'll work. That'll work. So that was my first time getting punched in the face by a multiple Oscar winner.
Your first time.
First time. First and only time.
Oh, okay.
First and only
I was
time.
hoping there was another story there.
Yeah.
Again, looking through your body of work, I noticed that you and Laura have worked on a lot of things together.
Yeah.
But I've heard from other folks that you come in here that you don't really see the other people you're working with hardly at all.
Not very often. Laura and I have been very lucky in that regard. You know, for a lot of video games, you record by yourself. Anime is I can't think of any instance where it hasn't been one actor at a time. In original animation, we're much more fortunate. We get to do it radio play style, so you'll have anywhere from 3 to 4 to sometimes. This last game that we worked on, we had 11 people in the room, which is just like an insane asylum of adults doing crazy voices and, you know, big personalities. So it gets a little barbaric in there at times. But Laura and I have been able to be in a lot of video games and a lot of shows, and you know, people ask like, you know, is it a package deal? You know, or you know, what's the deal? And it's, you know, she's just incredibly talented, and I guess I don't suck too much, and so, you know, we've just been fortunate in that way. We may have a slight advantage in opportunities where actors get to audition together, because if it's Troy and I auditioning together, or Laura and I, or somebody else that we know, you have that pre-existing relationship, so it always works to your benefit. But Laura's terrible. She smells funny. She's standing in the doorway now, and now I'm in big trouble.
Travis didn't get all this time to himself, so I imagine we got to give Laura time to herself as well. If you want to sit up in the back though and
Yes.
call and stuff,
Throw paper airplanes and stuff.
I don't know if she's okay with that, but if you guys would please thank Travis for coming and taking some time.
Hey, yeah.